The Story of Moses, a short story version. Moses, who was an unprotected boy after being placed in the basket and pushed onto the Nile, was spotted by the Pharaoh's daughter, who took pity on him and drew him out of the river. Later on, Moses lived as a prince in Egypt. However, one day, Moses killed an Egyptian after witnessing the Egyptian who was beating a Hebrew. Due to his fear, Moses ran into the wilderness, where he found 7 women by the well who were being bullied by the shepherds. Moses decided to help them. He did not only draw water for them, but he also watered the flock. Jethro, the father of the 7 young women, was quite impressed and welcomed Moses into the family. Jethro even offered his daughter Zipporah's hand in marriage. Near Horeb, Moses got a call from God through a burning bush which was not being consumed. God told Moses regarding the people who were suffering and how he wanted them to be brought into a land flowing with milk and honey. The 10 plagues are one of the many essential signs God gave the Pharaoh to persuade him to let his people go. However, at the same time, God was going to harden the Pharaoh's heart. The 10th plague, which is celebrated as the Passover, was when all the firstborn babies of the Egyptians were killed. Due to this, it made the Pharaoh let all the Israelites to leave. After which, Moses began leading the people to the promised land that God had told him. In the midst of their journey, they encountered many hardships. But, God had never left them, as he was always following their footsteps. Moses and the Israelites were being chased and surrounded by the Pharaoh's army at the Red Sea. Moses felt helpless, so he cried for God's help. God heard his cry, and so he parted the Red Sea with the use of Moses' rod. The Israelites walked on the dry ground and crossed the sea, followed by the Egyptian army. Once the Israelites have safely crossed, Moses dropped his rod, closing the sea, and drowning the pursuing Egyptians. Moses and the Israelites continued the journey. However, they were again faced with a serious conflict in the wilderness, which brought out the Israelites' unfaithfulness. They began cursing God and compared their life during the Exodus to the life they had as slaves, stating that it was better to live as slaves since they had plenty of bread, whilst, on the other hand, in the wilderness, they were starving to death. However, God had listened to Moses and his people's words and sent down bread from heaven. After all the tedious and exhausting encounters, they eventually reached the Promised Land 40 years later. However, many of the people were not permitted to enter, including Moses. This is the consequence of the sins they created whilst in the process of coming to the Promised Land. Additionally, Moses failed to follow God's command when he broke the rock in order to get water instead of speaking to it. God was very much dismayed. He didn't allow Moses to enter the Promised Land. Overall, Moses had shown his faith to God in many ways. He gave everything up, preferring to be counted a captive with the people of God, instead of being a royal in a pagan palace. He didn't fear Pharaoh's anger, but demanded his people be set free, because the Lord God had promised that the world's Redeemer would descend from their race. Moral of the story: don't run away from your mistakes. Own your failures, face the consequences, learn from it, and practice not to do them again.